native of Boston, Kimball Gallagher earned his undergraduate degree at Rice University in the studio of Gene Kerman Fisher and his Master's of Music degree as a pupil of Robert MacDonald at the Juilliard School.
My current project is called the 88 Concert Tour because there's 88 keys on the piano. It's something I started about 5 years ago. The original idea was to play music in private homes in the United States. And this is because, you know, everywhere in the world they talk about, for classical music especially, that the opportunities for artists are becoming smaller and the audiences are becoming smaller, but there's more and more artists than ever before. And I just that actually there were a lot of homes where people had pianos in their homes, but concerts were not happening, and they could happen. So this is an opportunity for possibility. And so this inspired me to start this tour called the 88 Concert Tour, one concert for each key on the piano, to explore this idea and to see if it would be viable. And so I started getting into personalizing concerts, so I'd ask people what their favorite pieces are and choosing pieces that way, and then I started composing pieces based on people's names. So you would take the letter of somebody's name and line it up with a note, and you know, you go through their whole name and you might have 4, 8, depending on how many letters there are in their name, you'd have that number of notes, and then you create a composition or an improvisation from that. This was working, actually. I found that it was working. There was a lot of people who were excited to do this, and actually this is for the sort of European tradition of classical music. This is the way it was meant to be. A lot of composers composed pieces that were intended for either the home or at least small private settings among a group of people that knew each other. It wasn't a public audience in the sense that people come from all different places and they don't know each other at all. And when you have an audience that knows each other and is comfortable and is socializing, actually the atmosphere in the room changes so much and people listen much better, I find. And so that was sort of the first stage. But then, around the 17th concert of the tour, I was invited to Afghanistan. And you know, before 2001, music was illegal in Afghanistan completely. And from 2008, there was a new music school founded, the Afghanistan National Institute of Music, by Dr. Ahmed Sarmast, who's the first Afghan to ever get a doctorate in music. And he was trying to rebuild this musical infrastructure. They teach Western music, Afghan music, and Indian music there. And I had a good friend who was teaching violin there, William Harvey, and they had a time called the Winter Academy, where they invited guest artists. And I went there, was in residence for about a week, and I had done things like this before, but never to the scale of Afghanistan, and a country where music had been, you know, basically destroyed completely. And so it just totally changed how I was thinking about the tour. It was just very inspiring to work with the kids in War Zone. There's one particular pianist named Elham, incredibly gifted. He's, you know, he asked for a composition lesson, and I started showing him his name in music. And it's a great way to teach composition, because if the kids, they can at least get to the point where they can play their name in music, and if they're more advanced, they can take further steps. Well, I showed him his name, I gave him a few ideas. We had sort of the initial lesson, and the next day he came back and he had completed composition now. And I always tell the story of Afghanistan and Elham, and it was just so touching for me to see this. I mean, literally growing up in a war zone, and he's practicing piano. And the school is like that too. It's like military helicopters flying overhead, and you're trying to teach someone a scale on the piano. The contrast is just so striking, so you feel the impact that you're making as an artist. And so it's just extremely rewarding. And one follow-up to that story, I played the piece in Dubai, Elham's piece, and somebody came up to me after the concert and said, "We'd like to help Elham." And I said, "Well, he needs a piano." So she bought him a piano, which is now in his house in Kabul. So after that experience, I decided that I wanted to keep doing the home concerts, but I wanted to consciously include what I would call music in a humanitarian context. So you're still teaching and performing, but maybe focusing on going to places where it's less common for Western artists to come, and where there's been some sort of conflict or transition going on in the country. And it changes your awareness as an artist of the meaning of that whole interaction. And so that led to, that's when I decided to make the project international. And there's many stories I could tell you about that, but I'm up to the concert 77 now. Actually, there's been way more than 77 concerts of all kinds in 25 countries, and this is my 5th or 6th trip to Egypt. I've been to Tunisia 10 times, I went to Afghanistan 3 times, I went to India twice, I did a whole project with Indian waste pickers. Yeah, so that's an overview of the journey. I've done a number of things in Egypt, different projects. One of the most fun projects was called Musical Koshery, and this is a collaboration from an American NGO called Cultures in Harmony that I'm a part of, and we collaborated with the Alexandria-based Bridge youth organization, and it was 7 Egyptian musicians and I think 4 American musicians, and we pretty much locked ourselves in the room for a week and came up with a concert program. So we had Turkish music, we had Egyptian songs, some other Egyptian music. We wrote some pieces together. We had American rock songs, and a variety of other kinds. And that was the idea, the koshery aspect, the mixed aspect. So we had a blast, and the musicians were all extremely, amazing musicians, great to work with, very creative, very inspirational, had a lot of fun. So that was a wonderful experience.